Time to talk about your health. Living a Primal Lifestyle. With your hosts, Nico and Ellen Haan. Now, Nico and Ellen Haan.
Good morning, I'm Nico Haan, and welcome to Living a Primal Lifestyle, where we explore a return to a more balanced and natural wild world.
To recover our natural health and regain our rights and freedoms. Good morning, I'm Ellen Haan.
It's a beautiful morning in downtown St. Petersburg, 70 degrees, 10% humidity. 10% chance of rain, 86% humidity.
I'm going to say 10% humidity. Whoa, where are we?
But visibility is 10 miles, air quality is good, so it's a beautiful thing. I'd like to remind you folks of two things. Let me get my cursor over here. The Primal Edge, over 310 organic cell-ready liquid ingredients. And the important part is the fulvic and humic acid that gets the good stuff in.
And lets the bad stuff out.
And then the second thing is this follows our show, Living a Primal Lifestyle. It's a Health Signals newsletter, and it follows all the articles are in here that follow the show. So you can do your own, research. A little whispering going on
Yeah,
here.
well, we're trying to get settled here.
That's okay, baby. I'd like to talk to you today about the big fat controversy, changing opinions about saturated fats. And this is an article that was written in docs.org. And it's an important thing to, I think, understand how we got where we were as far as the Western world is concerned about how we're eating now. And that's slowly changing, but, it's important to realize that nutritionists have long vilified saturated fat for its propensity to raise LDL, which they call the bad cholesterol levels in the blood. And although the initial studies that associated saturated fat intake with heart disease have really kind of failed to confirm the link even today. Now, saturated fat raises the good cholesterol levels, perhaps even doing away with the bad effects on the LDL cholesterol. And an unintended consequence of a low-fat diet may be increasing your carbohydrate intake, which could actually raise your heart rate disease. So it really started back in, it says here, September 24th, 1955, when the current U.S. president then, Dwight Eisenhower, suffered a massive heart attack. He was very popular, and he was visiting his in-laws, and he had played about 27 holes of golf, and then thought he had indigestion when he actually had a heart attack. So once a rare ailment,
by the 1950s.
By the 1950s, heart disease started to become something of a concern to people.
Leading cause of death in the United States. Yeah.
And researchers were already at that time beginning to implicate dietary fats, particularly saturated fats, with cardiovascular disease. And there was a logic to this. Saturated fats, such as those in butter and meat and cheese and eggs, raise serum cholesterol in laboratory animals and in humans. And because cholesterol is the major component of the plaque.
Atherosclerotic plaque?
Yeah, and early studies have been linking this high serum cholesterol levels to the heart disease, and saturated fat must, they concluded, cause heart disease. Yeah. And this really came about, this researcher named Ansel Keys, and I think a lot of people have heard about him. He's the guy who developed the U.S. K rations for the U.S. Army. So he was a prominent picture at that time of coming up with something that really helped our military. And I think if you look back in those days, and people who were alive, like we were during that time, I mean, we had just come out of the war. The Americans had saved the world. We were the technological wonder of the world, and everything was good. I mean, everything, the TV was starting. We started getting commercials, and everything just was a rosy picture. America was the savior, and everything we did was good. So the natural propensity was for these companies to kind of get on board of this whole thing, I think.
But the problem is that diets have gone through stages, and there's a big dichotomy between the science and the reality sometimes, and there's a big dichotomy of the interpretation of the results and the reality.
Yeah.
And there's, in this article, they talk a lot about the fact that there is no direct correlation between the fats
The saturated fats.
Yeah, the saturated fats and heart disease. Mm-hmm. And it's, how do you know what the heck to eat?
Well, especially when it's being promoted so much. So Ansel Keys, he did this study, and he had about 30 countries in the study. When the study was completed, he picked 7 countries. And the 7 countries showed that he compared the health and diet of 12,700 middle-aged people in Italy, Greece, Yugoslavia, Finland, the Netherlands, Japan, and the United States. In his conclusions, populations that ate large amounts of saturated fats in meat and dairy had more deaths from heart disease than those that ate mostly grains and nuts and fish and vegetables.
Yeah,
and
the
things
problem
like that.
is that when you do any of these studies, you have to take into consideration the whole picture.
Well, the whole picture was 30 countries. And
I understand, but the problem again with statistics is sometimes people will pick out the statistics that support their position.
Well, that's what happened here. Yeah.
And so that's what happened here. And if you go into something with a hypothesis that you then look for support for, you're supposed to be looking to see if you can discredit it.
That's exactly right.
But that isn't what happens.
Right.
So you have that problem. And then you also have things like lifestyle and other do they smoke? Do they drink alcohol? Exercise, movement, what kind of job do they have? Are they exposed to toxins in the environment? There are so many other contributing factors.
True.
And so, it's like saying, I'll wear a string of garlic around my neck to keep the vampires away. Mm-hmm. You don't see any vampires, do you?
Or elephants.
Right. Yeah. And so, therefore, it must work.
Yeah.
And that's what we call specious or fallacious logic. It's a fallacy. It's not an actual connection.
So there was a paper released on January 29th of 2015. I examined the data on fat and cardiovascular disease available to the U.S. and the UK regulatory committees. The analysis revealed that the 6 randomized controlled trials available back then did not provide sufficient proof or evidence that cutting total fat or even saturated fat intake reduces deaths from heart disease. So they already, at that 2015, had done the studies, but we're still on the bandwagon. And there were a lot of different studies done. If you take just the 30 that he took, if you took that whole thing, you would conclude, there's no evidence here. But no, he nitpicked and picked the 7 countries that showed there was maybe some correlation somewhere along the line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, and now it's 35 years since the first guidelines were issued, at that point. And there's a continued lack of consistent evidence that shows that dietary saturated fats are connected to heart disease.
Yeah.
And but yet the government continues making recommendations based on these old studies and don't seem to want to be confused by the facts.
Yeah, and there's a good reason for that. So when we get back from the break, we're going to go into some of these reasons and why we changed and why it made sense to a lot of people. So the number here is 877-927-6648. If you'd like to give us a call, otherwise just hang on. We'll be back in a couple of minutes.
Introducing Primal Edge.
Today, it's even more important to take a supplement that complements your health. Primal Edge is specifically formulated to boost your immune system and help with weight loss, better sleep, stress reduction, and the need to detox.
Our early ancestors found all their nutritional requirements in the wild environment. But today, our food sources don't contain the vitamins, minerals, and nutrients that we need to stay healthy and strong.
That's why we need Primal Edge Daily Nutrition. It includes a special blend of ionic, soil-based vitamins, minerals, fatty and amino acids in an easy-to-use liquid form.
Primal Edge is powered by highly concentrated humic and fulvic acids, nature's preferred delivery system. They've been called miracle molecules because, like sunlight, air, and water, without them, life cannot exist.
That's right, Ellen. They ensure we receive all the nutrition we need to be healthy and thrive. We take it every morning.
Primal Edge. Just $89 exclusively at TFNN.com.
TFNN is excited about our new software charting program, The Art of Timing the Trade Charts. In collaboration with Tom O'Brien and using his best-selling book, The Art of Timing the Trade, Your Ultimate Trading Mastery System, David White has programmed an outstanding piece of software that will complement any trader's methodology. Using this first-of-its-kind program, The Art of Timing the Trade Charts allows you to scan thousands of stocks for Fibonacci formation setups, including Gartleys, ABCs, butterflies, and much more. The Art of Timing the Trade Charts is designed to help you when scouring the markets for stocks just beginning to form the trading patterns that many investors spend days, weeks, or even months searching to find. And right now, we're offering licenses available at only $79 a month. We are so confident that you're going to love this new charting software that will even give you a 30-day unconditional money-back guarantee. Don't miss out on this incredible new piece of software. Get your copy of The Art of Timing the Trade Charts today by visiting TFNN.com. Will the S&P 500 continue to climb? For bold trades on U.S. large-cap stocks in either direction, trade SPXL, SPUU, or SPXS. Directions Daily S&P 500 Bull and Bear Leveraged ETFs. Direction Leveraged ETFs. An investor should carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses before investing. A fund's prospectus and summary prospectus contain this and other information about Direction shares. To obtain a fund's prospectus and summary prospectus, call 866-476-7523 or visit directioninvestments.com. A fund's prospectus and summary prospectus should be read carefully before investing. An investment in the funds is subject to risk, including the possible loss of principal. The funds are designed to be utilized only by sophisticated investors such as traders and active investors. Distributor Foreside Fund Services, LLC.
So this morning we're looking at the big fat controversy.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. It's a fascinating article. I had no idea. You know, before 1910, people in the United States used butter and animal fats for cooking and for baking. And these were rich in saturated fatty acids, which are defined chemically as fat molecules with no double bonds between the carbon atoms of the hydrocarbon chain. Saturated fats are solid at room temperature. And then, in contrast, the vegetable oils such as corn, soybean, canola, rapeseed oils are liquids at room temperature and contain primarily unsaturated fats. So that would be either monounsaturated or polyunsaturated. And then in 1910, nobody used vegetable oils for cooking. In fact, oils were used to make soap, candles, lubricants, and other non-edible products.
Yeah, and that's when the change started taking place, a kind of a dramatic change, as the processing of hulling and pressing these seeds and beans was mechanicalized. Vegetable oils became cheaper than raising and slaughtering animals for butter or animal fat. And aggressive marketing by the vegetable companies claimed that vegetable oils were a more healthy, easier to digest choice and more sanitary alternatives to animal fats. In 1911, Procter & Gamble applied for a U.S. patent for the process of hydrogenating vegetable oils. And by adding the hydrogen molecules, they removed some of those double bonds in the unsaturated fats. And this is when they started coming up with the Crisco shortening. So now no longer was a liquid, it looked like the lard. Mm-hmm. A really important step. And then that's when they also brought out the margarine. And at that time, when it first came out, I distinctly remember my mother would give me the margarine because it was all white. And there was this colored button on there that you squeezed so you could make it look like butter. And it wasn't coloring, a coloring, so it would look like butter.
Yellow.
So the people next door wouldn't know. They don't make butter. They're using margarine. It's a lot cheaper. They don't have the money, that type of thing. But and later on, they were able to put the dye in there and make it more stable. So this is when the change took place. Yeah. And when you look at, there's a graph here. Let me come over here. Where is it? Yes. Okay.
Other way.
There's a graph here that shows you the shortening. So the shortening is the red one here. You can see how by the 1950s it really changed. 1960s, soybean oil, or the shortening here,
Crisco. I mean,
Yeah.
my mother always had Crisco in the house, and
mostly shortening. And if you know a little bit about the history of shortening or the history of soybeans, you have to look at the Asian countries like Japan and Korea and China, where they've used these for years, but they don't use it in the manner that we do. Soybeans are highly inflammatory to the system because of the certain properties that irritate the stomach lining, all kinds of things. So they developed over the years a system of putting it into a brine and just keeping it there for years, sometimes 6 to 8 years, the real good stuff. So your tofu, which comes from soybeans, it traditionally was treated to get rid of these problem things that were in it. And none of that, of course, the toxins. And none of that was done in the process of changing these to oils.
And another major dietary change that took place in the last 50 years was the substitution of fats in the diet with carbohydrates.
That's the real change,
pasta,
isn't it?
grains, sugar, fruit, and starchy vegetables. And people don't realize that sugar is really a carbohydrate partner.
Yeah, well, definitely. It's the one that causes the most problems. I mean, it's highly processed, first of all. So if you're not on a processed food, you would never eat it. So that's one thing, but it's also a carbohydrate that directly injects a massive amount of sugar or cholesterol, or not cholesterol, but blood sugar into your system, which alerts everything. All the flags go up into your system, and now you have to fight that.
Yeah, well, plus when you eat carbohydrates in general, if it's not sugar per se, they do convert to sugar to be stored and to be used for fuel and to be burned, and then it becomes fat.
Yeah, so the sugar is so volatile in there, your body really wants to get rid of it. So it'll use as much as it can,
burn it
but
out.
at the same time, it's going to store it because there's too much of it. And so then this low-fat craze hit the nation really back in around 1970s, I would say, maybe past 50 years.
The American Heart Diet.
Yeah, people began avoiding foods such as full-fat dairy, eggs, just eating the white part of the eggs. Don't eat any red meat, and substitute low-fat or fat-free foods, many of these which added sugar. So it became really confusing because they're, one thing, telling you not to eat any fat, to really cut down on that. Don't eat sugar, that's dangerous for you too. And also, weren't they talking about salt at that time, too? So you can't have salt. And these are the three flavorings for food that make food taste good. So you take away all these three things, now you have to come up with new food. And that's exactly what carbohydrates became, because up until then, the only carbohydrates we were really eating were some vegetables. And not a lot of them. And we were eating potatoes too, because that came from the New World.
Right.
So, and of course, corn was being consumed a little bit more. But as people started, remember we talked about Kellogg's, about he found some stale maize on his counter, pressed it into a flake, and he thought it was the greatest thing ever. And I remember that distinctly. It was for him, and it was for a lot of people. That's what we ate for the last 50 years, is the cereals and the porridge and the pastas and all these things that, if you're from Italy, you eat a lot of pasta. Well, no, they don't eat a lot of pasta. They eat a little pasta, but they have it every day.
Well, the
because
pasta
it's a good
is
substitute.
As a side dish, not as a main dish.
Exactly, and we made it. And the same with the rice from China. Most of them didn't have small pieces of rice. They had large.
They didn't have a whole plate of rice.
Yeah,
they had a small bowl of rice.
Exactly, yeah. And all these things, remember, were used to extend the food in the past. In winter comes, you don't have as much meat around. You make the potatoes, and the juices of the meat are there. It's going to taste very similar. It'll remind you of it, and it fills you up, and it gives you calories. So when it saves your life, you're going to use these things. They become part of not only tradition, but as we've noted before in the past, religious ceremonies are built around these things. You don't see too many religions saying, "Hey, the meat's here, let's eat." No, it's always the wafer. With the blood of Christ on it, or it's not good stuff usually. That's the way I see it. So The reason dietary fats garnered a bad reputation in the 1950s is that high fat intake, particularly saturated fat, raised the level of total cholesterol in the blood, which is a factor for heart disease. But it wasn't until in the 1980s that researchers began to appreciate that all forms of cholesterol are not equal. We found out really that the best test is not the cholesterol test, but the size of the HDLs.
The side of the cholesterol, if it's high density or low density.
Right. So it's not really the HDLs or the LDLs. You have to take those LDLs and strip them down and say, how much of this do you have that's the larger ones and how much are the smaller ones?
Well, the question is whether something's blocking in a detrimental way or whether
is it patching it up?
Or it's patching it up.
Yeah.
And the older you get, apparently, the more you need.
Yeah, in a sense that's true. We'll talk about that when we get back. Stick around, folks. We got a little bit more.
You've heard Nico Haan as co-host of Living a Primal Lifestyle, which airs every Friday at noon Eastern Time on TFNN, and would like to tell you about the personal training studio that Nico is the owner and president of, Performance Training. Since 1998, Nico has trained individuals and groups to improve their health both mentally and physically. As a certified personal trainer, Nico's main focus is on demonstrating exercises correctly to avoid injury and teaching his clients how to manage their past injuries while getting the most out of their personal training sessions. The Performance Training Studio is filled with unique training equipment that enhances balanced results at a faster rate while minimizing damage and discomfort. For more information, you can give Nico a call at 727-418-8740 or email him at nico@tfnn.com. Let him know you heard him on TFNN and save up to $100 on a special package just for TFNN listeners. Act today. If you're not currently using the TAS Profile Scanner when looking at setting up your trading opportunities, then your arsenal is short a mighty weapon. The TAS Profile Scanner is a standalone piece of software that instantly filters over 2,500 global financial markets such as stocks, ETFs, commodity futures, and Forex. Headed by Steve Dahl, TAS understands that in today's technological world, the use of top-flight software applications and technical analysis expertise is essential to successful trading in today's market. You also gain access to the webinar that Steve Dahl and Tom O'Brien just hosted, The Best Way to Use the TAS Profile Scanner to Profit. This webinar archive is available for all subscribers immediately upon signing up. All new subscriptions also come with a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you have nothing to risk. Start your subscription by visiting the front page of TFNN.com today, and you'll find the TAS Profile Scanner under the Services tab. Sign up today. Are you in the market for buying or selling real estate in the Bay Area, including the surrounding St. Petersburg, Tampa, and Clearwater markets? Tiger Real Estate LLC is a firm that has extensive experience in the Tampa Bay area. Whether you're looking to sell your current property for maximum value, or you're in the market for a second home or investment property, Tiger Realty has the experience across all areas of real estate in the Tampa Bay area to help buyers and sellers make the most informed decisions across all price levels. From the price you should be paying per square foot in certain up-and-coming areas to the type of cash flow investment properties are capable of creating, Tiger Real Estate can help you make the best decision when it comes to all areas of the market. Before you make one of the biggest decisions of your financial future, call Tiger Real Estate LLC today at 727-329-8322 or email us at tiger@tfnn.com. That's 727-329-8322. Call us today.
This segment is brought to you by Think or Swim. For more information, just click the Think or Swim banner on the front page of TFNN.com.
So with cholesterol, it does seem confusing a little bit. And what we do know is, like you said before the break, is as you get older, we need a little more cholesterol. And the reason for that is it's the kind of the plaster of Paris that fixes the little things that go wrong in the arteries. So it's the thing covering it up. And this is the confusing part, that we need it as we get older, so naturally it rises, something that we didn't know in the 50s, but we know now.
Yeah, it naturally rises.
It naturally rises because we need it more. We need more protection because we've been scarring ourselves a little bit, through aging.
Yeah, well, and the tiny little tears and imperfections are kind of plastered over.
Yeah. So Keyes, when he selected his countries, he showed that people from countries that consumed higher of saturated fat, amounts of saturated fat in the United States and Finland and these other countries, had a greater rate than those of saturated fat.
Well, had heart disease at a greater rate, right?
Heart disease.
But the problem is that while they prove correlation, it doesn't prove causation.
Right.
So that was
it's kind of like what Page used to say, that when your house is on fire, there's usually a fire engine going to be there. But the fire engine didn't cause it. But there's a fire engine at all fires because we're trying to put the fire out.
Right.
And this is the kind of thing with the cholesterol.
Yeah.
The cholesterol is always there. As we get older, it's going to be there more because we need it more.
And the other thing that was interesting in this was that when somebody went back and reanalyzed the 7-country study in 1999, they concluded that actually sugar consumption correlated more strongly than the saturated fat intake.
That's right. And these were modern countries, and they were coming out of the war, and the sugar consumption has started going up. We started eating, remember, the cereals, which didn't have any flavor at all. So naturally, that's where the sugar goes right away. You put a little sugar on it. And in fact, they sold all these, remember, it wasn't just Kellogg's cornflakes. They had the frosted mini wheats and all these frosted flakes and things that already had.
There are millions of kinds of, not millions, but hundreds of choices of cereal that have some kind of chocolate or sugar or frosting or added coloring with, anything to attract the kids. And I think grown-ups think they have to eat shredded wheat because it doesn't taste good, but it must be healthy. Yeah. I don't know. But so they made frosted wheats, as you say, and that helped made them more palatable for adults as well.
Yeah, and this other article that we have here, which is called How the Ideology of Low-Fat Conquered America, they discuss some of the things that, different products come out. This kind of covers the same thing, but here we have the boneless, skinless chicken breasts. And now you have a little heart thing on here.
Heart healthy.
Yeah, so the promotion of these types of things was everywhere. Just like today, it's really the only thing you see is either advertising of the program that's coming up on the same network, or it's a drug.
A drug. Oh, my goodness, yes.
And we talked the other day about, how all the drug things, all these important little statements are really small. I mean, you can't read them. But
the side effects.
The side effects are all on there, and they're all so small. Right. And then the next program comes up, and we're
streaming now.
Yeah, we're streaming.
So it says, warning, fast forward and other functions may not work.
And there's bold letters across the screen, and they're really important, isn't it? I mean, it shows you that advertising really does work, and if you hide certain facts, you're still going to get people to buy these things because it's small. It's not consequential. Large is what's consequential.
Yeah, well,
don't touch that button, folks. So it's kind of interesting.
Surprised they don't put it in red.
Yeah.
The warning color.
Yeah, yeah. And it's the same thing with we have the dates are on there. How many people died during a specific period of time. Back in the 1980s or 90s was the Iranian people that were hostage. How many hostages they have in Iran? The numbers of days that they were So these numbers are there just to make you pay attention to it.
It's math. It must be important.
Well, yeah, that too. So, there comes a time back in the 1990s when we started really looking at things, and things changed because certain diets came about. We had the Atkins diet come about, and all of a sudden hey, you can eat fat, it's actually good for you. And this was a guy who did cancer studies, and he figured out that cancer was being fed by sugar. So if sugar is no good, these carbohydrates are no good because you're substituting for the fat. Wait a minute, the fat is actually good for you. So, we've come full circle, but yet the industry really hasn't, as far as from a consumer type of thing. we still have these vegetable oils. We know they're no good for us, but that's mostly what they're still selling because they're advertising it. Nobody's advertising lard. And lard is not expensive. I bought a 40-pound tub of lard for $40, so it's $1 a pound. And it's been 2 years since I think we've been using it. And we haven't used half of it yet. Much cheaper than oil, much better for you. Now you can eat fried food again instead of having peanut oil or soybean oil. You know, these things are really, really bad for you, and they work on you slowly. You don't realize it for 40 years, and then all of a sudden, you're 60 years old, and now you've got lots and lots of problems with your heart, with your sugar, diabetes, and things like that. And this is exactly what we see. This is why people are heavy in America and other Western countries, strictly because of the diet that they're pushing.
Yeah, the problem is that it seems like the diets, the nutrition, the whole food is an industry. And just like the hospitals just are big business now, just like the insurance companies are running health care, there's been a shift, and people who are not in the health business are running our health.
Yeah, good point.
And so we're still subject to the mighty dollar, and as long as companies are making tons of money on these things, they're going to keep doing it, regardless of whether it's the best thing. Yep. The other alternative is not to make so much money, and that's not okay in this society.
So there's been a lot of talk over the last decade of changing a lot of these things, and the tendency is to change very slowly. Mm-hmm. This is the way the government kind of moves. We got to look at these things.
Everybody moves slowly.
Yeah, in a sense, you're right. So, but you know, we've changed. We've changed about 12 or 13 years ago. We changed our habits, and slowly but surely, we've been tweaking it, but going more towards the flavor of things, and also what we're satisfied with, that we don't get hungry anymore is a big relief to us, mm-hmm. because I used to go crazy. So that's a big plus. Plus, we do see a difference in our health. Mm-hmm. We don't mm-hmm. get the colds and the flus. The only thing, maybe a little allergies, but actually with the Wim Hof breathing things, that's been going really well. This is one of the years that I've had less and less problems with my allergies.
Well, first you had a severe reaction, and which was unusual for
mm-hmm.
you.
Yeah.
But you did find that the breathing did alleviate most of the symptoms quickly and enabled you to feel energized.
And as I go along and doing it more and more, it's mm-hmm. a cumulative effect. And I think that's the same thing with the diet. You get on a good diet and everything starts to work good, and you go, oh, I guess things are going right. I'm sleeping better. I got energy levels, everything like that. We talk about, when we get back, a different aspect of this whole thing. So stick around, folks.
Introducing Primal Edge.
Today, it's even more important to take a supplement that complements your health. Primal Edge is specifically formulated to boost your immune system and help with weight loss, better sleep, stress reduction, and the need to detox.
Our early ancestors found all their nutritional requirements in the wild environment. But today, our food sources don't contain the vitamins, minerals, and nutrients that we need to stay healthy and strong.
That's why we need Primal Edge Daily Nutrition. It includes a special blend of ionic, soil-based vitamins, minerals, fatty and amino acids in an easy-to-use liquid form.
Primal Edge is powered by highly concentrated humic and fulvic acids, nature's preferred delivery system. They've been called miracle molecules because, like sunlight, air, and water, without them, life cannot exist.
That's right, Ellen. They ensure we receive all the nutrition we need to be healthy and thrive. We take it every morning.
Primal Edge. Just $89 exclusively at TFNN.com.
Hi, folks. This is Tom O'Brien. The printing presses are working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The U.S. deficit has risen 200% in 1 year with no end in sight. The markets are looking for an additional stimulus bill to get us through this once-in-a-generation pandemic. There is no free lunch, folks. The more stimulus dollars put into the marketplace, the less your dollar is worth each and every day. This is the time to protect yourself with a portion of your portfolio in the metal market. The Gold Report comes out each Monday morning. I bisect and dissect the dollar, silver, gold, the XAU, and the HUI. The Gold Report is a long-term hedge against the dilution of your buying power. The U.S. has put more than $6 trillion into the marketplace in the last 6 months, with more expected in the next few months. The market did and does need the stimulus, but it will have long-term implications on our buying power. The Gold Report comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Go to TFNN.com and order the Gold Report now. Protect your buying power. Order the Gold Report now.
The technology around us is changing every day. With so much happening, it can seem impossible to keep up with all the information. David White's investment newsletter, The Technology Insider, is designed to give you all the information you need to understand the technology that shapes today's markets and tomorrow's future. David White has made his living staying on the cutting edge of technology. His weekly newsletter will give you specific recommendations for value tech stocks, as well as entry prices, target prices, and stops to set for each trade. Dave delivers his weekly newsletters every Friday with updates throughout the week. You can get the Technology Insider at TFNN.com for only $37.50. Sign up for David's newsletter, The Technology Insider, and get an inside look at everything the technology sector has to offer. Try it risk-free today with our 30-day money-back guarantee. TFNN, educating investors.
Don't forget, you can listen to TFNN live on your mobile device 24 hours per day. Go to TFNN.com, then hit Watch Tiger TV. That's TFNN.com, then hit Watch Tiger TV for the latest market information.
Now, it wasn't just the government and it wasn't just Ansel Keys and these scientists that promoted this thing. There's another organization or many organizations that are in the fitness and the weight loss industry that really put this whole notion of consuming lots of carbohydrates instead of fat.
Yeah, before you work
because, first of all, they say that the preferred fuel for the brain is sucrose. Or glycogen. And they say that the first choice for us is always to burn the carbs. Well, that's true. If you've got carbs in you, your body is going to burn the carbs first. There's no doubt about that. And if they don't have access to the fat, then when you run out of carbs, you get hungry very quickly. And even somebody that's on a 9% fat threshold has plenty of fat for that day or even maybe a couple of days. So logically, there wouldn't be any reason for them to be hungry unless they're not able to burn fat. And that's kind of what we find. We found that if you're primarily starting your day with carbohydrates like cereals or porridge and things like that, then you're going to get hungry faster because that fuel burns very quickly.
Yeah, that's the difference between a sugar burner and a fat burner, and those are kind of the two ways of getting fuel in your system.
Right.
I remember when we...
And sugar and carbohydrates are interchangeable in this scenario.
Yeah, yes. And I remember when we first were reading Nora Gagatas's publications about
Primal
burning.
Body, Primal Mind, I think it was.
Was her first book.
I think so.
And it was fascinating because she talked about the fact that if you wanted to... She used the analogy of making a campfire.
Right.
And she said, you put a bunch of twigs and you put a bunch of small bits of wood in there and some newspaper and whatever, and you keep feeding the fire because it keeps going out.
Because you have to, yes.
And that was the analogy to a sugar burner, that you would burn up the fuel pretty fast and have to keep replenishing.
Yeah.
Versus the fat burner, who would put a very large series of logs on the fire.
Or just one big one.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking, a campfire, okay? So, but the point is that putting a couple of big logs on the fire, yes, you use the small stuff to get it started, but to continue and sustain it, it's a matter of having the larger logs, and they burn more slowly, and they continue, and it sustains the fire.
Yeah.
And that was her analogy to burning fat.
Yeah. And what really hit home with me is that when you run out of fuel with a carbohydrate person,
Sugar burner.
Sugar burner, you crash.
Yeah.
And
significant.
the brain doesn't work quite well, and you get kind of nasty. That's what happened to me. And the liberating fact when we switched over, it happened relatively quickly, too, that all of a sudden, oh, we haven't eaten for 6 hours. Oh, okay, well, maybe we better look for something. Or we can skip this meal. Doesn't really matter. You know, it wasn't a panic situation anymore. And that really kind of changed okay, now we're on the right track. Because from a standpoint of evolution, it makes more sense if you're hungry and you're hunting. Now you have to be very stealthy. You have to be very cunning and smart. And you can't have those brain freezes. So if you're on a carbohydrate diet, you're not going to be a good hunter. You're probably not going to be a hunter anyway because you're probably a vegetarian. So, so maybe that makes sense. But what I'm trying to say is that it's not a good analogy for us on the evolutionary path, because if we didn't hunt, we would die, because there were no vegetables back then. You go out in the forest today, you're not going to find vegetables. You'll find a little bush here and there of berries and a few things you can eat, and people who are really smart can probably live off of those things. The average person probably will die unless they find an animal of some kind.
Yeah, and the problem is that, again, the carbohydrate intake creates excessive glucose, which is a sugar, and is especially prevalent from eating processed grains and sugars in general. And, you know, if people get hungry, they grab a cookie, they grab something sweet, you know, they have a cola beverage or something like that.
In fact, in the fitness industry, we have designated protein shakes and drinks to take in between.
And the grain power bars.
Yeah, and these are not meals. These are substitute meals or in-between meals designed to have you every 2 or 4 hours have something to eat.
Well, and it also increases it gives you a little boost of energy because it stops the crash from the sugar, but it's more sugar.
Yeah.
So that's an important distinction, and people are having a lot of trouble absorbing the fact that when you're on a more saturated fat diet and less of a carbohydrate diet, you just don't get hungry.
Yeah.
You know, it's very fashionable to proclaim yourself as being hangry. You know, hungry, angry, right? You know, it's kind of a joke, but it's not. It's actually a real thing.
It sure is.
And but it's not. It shouldn't be fashionable to be hangry. You know, it should be. This is a sign I'm eating wrong.
Yeah. Well, the basic underlying assumption is that glucose is the preferred fuel for most cells. But because we can't store very much glucose, only in the liver and the muscles, we need to provide a continuous source of glucose in the form of carbohydrates, hard meals.
Exogenous carbohydrate.
Yeah, to keep the brain and the blood and all these things from going along nicely and humming and everything like that. But if we don't feed ourselves every few hours, then you're going to drop. You're going to be into that spiral.
The starvation mode. I'm starving.
Yeah, exactly.
And plus, then your body starts burning some of that muscle tissue.
And the other thing that is concerning in this whole process is because of the sugar being in your blood, the glucose is pulsating and insulin is being signaled. And when the pancreas is releasing that insulin, it always releases a bunch of it to say, okay, I'm giving you enough so you can do your thing. And what the purpose of insulin is kind of saying, okay, there's too much here, let's get rid of it, so it stores it. It normally stores it next to the muscles, where you could access it quickly. But it's in these fat cells. And if you're a sugar burner, you don't really have access to those things unless you're going really deep into the starvation mode. And you'll click over to that mode, but not after being very ornery and not feeling good for a while.
Yeah.
And the whole process is not very pleasant, whereas if you start off with the fat and being very satisfied, then you don't need the glucose. Glucose can be made from protein. It can be made from carbohydrates. It also can be made from fat. And any glucose that we need for our brain or our blood, the body can convert over from any of these things. So it's not just not that we need carbohydrates. In fact, we're told scientifically that carbohydrates are not essential at all. We only need fat and we only need protein. Carbs are a kind of an option as a survival mechanism.
Right, to just sustain your body in times of
so just think about it here. We're on survival mode 24 hours a day if you're a vegan or if you're a low-fat person.
So fat and protein were the dominant macronutrients assuming food was even available for the majority of 2.5 million years of our evolution.
Yeah. Stick around. We got a little bit more.
Steve Rhodes started his trading career as a student almost 20 years ago, and the student has now become the master. Steve won the prestigious Timer of the Year award in 2018 and barely missed that mark again in 2019, finishing at number 2 for the year. An amazing accomplishment. Steve Rhodes is committed to sharing his techniques and knowledge with anyone who wants to learn, and he shares his vast amount of trading knowledge every day in his Mastering Probability newsletter. Steve's award-winning newsletter, Mastering Probability, is delivered every trading day with updates throughout the afternoon. Sign up for Steve's market newsletter, Mastering Probability, and you'll receive access to 7 of Steve's educational webinars absolutely free. At TFNN, all our newsletters come with a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you have absolutely nothing to worry about. Visit TFNN.com and try Mastering Probability 30 days risk-free today. TFNN, educating investors.
Hi folks, Tom O'Brien here. If you'd like to get my daily newsletter, Market Insights, then now is a great time to sign up for a 30-day free trial. Every morning by 9:30, I send out my morning letter to subscribers with market commentary on a variety of markets, currencies, and commodities to keep investors up to date on the day's trading action. Included in Market Insights are specific buy and sell recommendations for stocks, ETFs, and even options, with stops and price targets included for every trade in my newsletter. If you'd like to try my newsletter risk-free for 30 days, then head over to the front page of TFNN and you'll find Market Insights under Trading Newsletters. I use my years of trading experience to bisect and dissect the market every morning and give my subscribers the most important information they need to know for the day ahead. I even issue afternoon updates for my subscribers whenever warranted with important market action. I'm always scouring the market for the next great trading opportunity. Sign up for your 30-day free trial to my daily newsletter, Market Insights, today by visiting the front page of TFNN.com. Wow! Go get them, folks.
Sharpening your skills as an investor is like getting better at playing a musical instrument. You have to practice, sure, but you also need excellent instruction from experts. At TFNN, you'll get advice and guidance from the authority in technical market analysis. And it's not just dry, tedious text either. TFNN airs live financial content streamed live on TFNN.com and TFNN's YouTube channel with Tiger TV, live every market day from 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern. For free. Each host is an experienced trader and gives their take on the market while taking calls and questions live from around the world. From the moment the market opens until the closing bell sounds, Tiger TV has 8 different shows with expert hosts to help you make the right moves with your money. Watch online at TFNN.com or on TFNN's YouTube channel and become the investor you were born to be. TFNN, educating investors.
Go ahead.
Our survival as a species has depended on these evolutionary adaptations away from glucose dependency. Entire civilizations have existed for ages what is practically a zero-carb diet. There's actually no requirement for any essential dietary carbohydrates in human nutrition. And, you know, it just makes sense that if you look at how we store our fuel, we don't have a lot of ways we can store carbohydrates.
Right.
Except as fat. Mm-hmm. So we're storing fat, and fat, therefore, is the preferred fuel because we can store it. And that's the basic premise of the whole thing, is that because we can store fat, it makes sense that we're going to carry around as much fuel as necessary. And we can only do that with fats. We cannot do that with carbohydrates. So it just makes sense.
And it says here that our survival as a species has depended on evolutionary adaptations away from glucose dependency. Yeah. And there have been civilizations over the centuries that have existed practically on a zero-carb diet.
Exactly.
And so there's actually no requirement for any essential dietary carbohydrates in the human nutrition. And it's possible to live a long and healthy life consuming none or very little carbs, and provided you get an adequate dietary protein and fat
Right.
intake. So if you go too long without protein or fat and you cut too far back on those, you end up ultimately sickening and possibly even dying. But if you cut out carbs, that does not affect you that way.
That's right. So it just makes sense. And the other source, we can eat the fat. We can also get it from our stored fats. And we can also get the type of sugar we need for our brain and our blood by a thing called glucogenesis. Glucogenesis, yeah. And this is a conversion of your protein or your carbohydrates carbohydrates or fat to the amount of fuel that you need for the brain. So that's how it works. And
really interesting articles this time in the Health Signals newsletter. So take a look and be well, be safe.
We'll be right back.
See you next week.
Oh, yeah.
The reality